Hi there. Thank you for tuning into my weekly show. Once again, my name is Doug Zanes. I'm a personal injury attorney in Arizona. I've got offices in Tucson and Phoenix. And I do this weekly show, and I usually talk about legal topics. But today I want to talk about the legal profession a little bit. And this kind of came onto my radar screen because recently I ran into a colleague of mine. And this is somebody, who's been practicing law about the same amount of time as I have, or really, I think probably the exact same amount of time, about 17 years. He and I actually went to the same law school in Texas, and he just happened to be from Arizona, so he's back in Arizona. And we graduated at the same time, took the state bar at about the same time, had been practicing about the same amount of time. And so he's been practicing for about 17 years, just like I have. And and even our law practices have started out in a similar way. I mean, he has a law office that or he's in business for himself, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. He has an office, and he's the only attorney in that office, and he has, I would guess, some support help. But he's a small business person who's a lawyer who has his law practice. And what really struck me about the conversation, because when we ran into each other, I probably haven't seen him for, 5-6 years, because I no longer handle criminal defense cases, and that's what he does, and that's when I used to see him. I'd actually see him at court all the time when we were down there representing clients, and because I have a personal injury law firm at this point, we don't handle those types of cases. I'm not down at court all the time on those types of cases, so I haven't seen him for a while. But we talked about his law practice a little bit. We talked about my law practice a little bit. And one of the things that struck me was he actually said, Doug, if I could figure out how to do something else for a living other than be an attorney at this point, that's what I would go do. I think he's bored with being a lawyer. He no longer enjoys being a lawyer. Clients can sometimes be difficult. Other lawyers can be difficult. It tends to be a stressful profession. And, it was interesting to me because I haven't felt that way up to this point. I've heard that a lot about the legal profession and attorneys. And, once they sort of have been doing it for 15 or 20 years or more, I think there are a lot of attorneys who no longer like what they do. I think there are a lot of professionals, quite honestly, whether it's lawyers, doctors, accountants, who no longer like what they do and then feel stuck. And that's where this colleague of mine actually is, according to our conversation, and things he said. I mean, he's kind of stuck. He's been practicing law for, over 15 years. He has his own law practice, so he works for himself. I don't know what his family situation is, but, generally at about our age, you have kids who are, most people, I think, have kids who are, in high school working their way to college. And so you worry about, I've got to, help them pay for college and all these other things. So it makes it harder to, to change careers or to do something else. But what was crazy to me is he really felt like there were no other options for him. And so he'll spend the next 20 years doing this, being a lawyer, doing the exact same thing, even though he's unhappy doing it, which to me, quite honestly, is astonishing. I mean, it really is. And I think it's because my career path has been a little bit different. I mean, I've always enjoyed being a lawyer throughout my career. I mean, I think it's a great profession. I think, attorneys do great things for their clients. But I also haven't spent the last 17 years just representing clients, in large part because of the career path that I've chosen, which is to truly build a personal injury law firm that functions like a business does, which has required me to become just as much of a business person or more of a business person than I've ever been a lawyer. So it's given me variety. It's allowed me to learn new things, to have different experiences, to grow as a professional, in a much different way than I think lots of attorneys do. And you know, and this is a good example because this is a colleague of mine who actually has his own law office. He has his own business. But I think what happens is because most lawyers don't view their law practice as a business, they simply create jobs for themselves is really all they've done. And they generate their income, sure, and but it's simply a job for themselves. I mean, it's not a business. Businesses grow, businesses expand, businesses have, employees that get added to the business as the revenue of the business continues to increase. And so a true business functions without, or will certainly, once you get it to that point, function without the founder. I mean, it just will. You have management people in place. You have, enough people who work for you. You have the ability to go out and, market and, get new clients and move forward without the founder really actively being part of the business, which is much different than a small law practice that's 100% dependent on the lawyer who started it. And if that lawyer decides to no longer work, that law practice no longer exists. I mean, it just shuts down. And that's not just law practice. It's quite honestly, that is most small businesses. That's what happens to them. Is when the founders or founder can no longer work, die, so they're no longer here to work, and aren't here to run the business, then the business no longer exists, which means it's not really a business. It means you've created a job for yourself, and you did that job until you were tired of working and you stopped working. And so, the process of truly building a business in my law practice or transitioning my law practice from a small law firm, which it was when I started it, to what quite honestly now is a successful business that provides legal services to our clients, has given me a lot of variety. It's given me a lot of opportunity to grow. It's given me a lot of these things that are important in life and in a career that most professionals don't get. And I think that's what kids who go off to law school, and they're not kids, adults who go off to law school, miss. Or if you're going off to become a dentist, or if you're becoming a doctor, you miss that piece. Because if you're going off and you're getting an MBA, generally people who even go into the corporate business world, as you move through your career, you grow, you change jobs. You have, even if it's all within the same company, you move up within that company and you have the opportunity to do different things and have different experiences. You have variety. You have a career path. So you have, you feel like you've been successful. It's different. And so when you're a professional, which it's great to be a professional. I mean, lawyers do great things for people. Doctors do great things for people. But lots of the times professionals, I think, feel like they get stuck. And so what was really crazy to me was when this colleague of mine said, hey, what else am I going to do? I've been doing this for 17 years. I've got all this, time committed to being an attorney. I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to do anything else. So I guess I'll just stay here and keep doing what I'm doing. Well, when you're, somewhere between 45 and 50 years old and you're going to be working for the next probably 20 to 30 years anyways, that's a really kind of a bad place to be. Because the reality of it is, the truth is, those are kind of the parameters he's created for himself in his head. Because he can go do anything else he wants. I mean, he can go buy a dry cleaning business if he wants. He just has to figure out how to get it done and totally get out of the legal profession 100%. He could decide at this point, instead of having a small law practice, he's going to build it into something different. Instead of just doing criminal defense work, he can, even if he wants a small law practice that's 100% dependent on him doing the work, he can add variety by learning to do a different area of law and building that practice. There are a dozen different things. Quite honestly, there are a lot more than that he could do to have a fulfilling career that continues to move forward and allows him to grow. But for whatever reason, I think a lot of people feel like they get stuck and they're not able to do those things. So this is really a podcast. It's not designed, for adults or for people who are thinking, hey, maybe I'll go to law school, and so I want to do a podcast to dissuade you from doing it. I'd never do that. I love being a lawyer. It's been a profession that's been very good to me. In fact, this isn't even geared towards just lawyers. Quite honestly, it's geared towards anybody out there who's listening, who works. Because I think what you ought to do is keep your keep your mind open to just having a fulfilling career. But to do that, you've got to grow yourself. You have to actually invest in yourself, whether it's through going to school, whether it's through different growth opportunities. My wife and I, over the years, have done lots of different things. We spent this past year really doing a lot of the things that Tony Robbins puts on, and have learned a tremendous amount about business, about success and growing as individuals, and it's been fantastic. You've got to put that effort in, in whatever way you choose to grow, and become a more rounded individual, to learn new things, to open new doors and opportunities for you. You have to put that effort in, just like you did it at some point earlier in your life. And you've got to do it if you're 50, you've got to do it if you're 55, you've got to do it if you're 65. But that's the beauty of life. And because people live so long now, you can do it at 65. There are people who change careers at 65. They do something totally different. Because who wants to do the same thing for 40 years? Really, what's wrong with changing, what you do? And the answer is nothing. It can be scary, and that's really what happens, is fear prevents people from making the change. Fear is what sort of leaves this colleague of mine in a place where he'll accept being unhappy in his career as opposed to making a change. So don't let fear do that to you. Life is wonderful with challenges. You're not always going to succeed necessarily, but if you make the effort and you're persistent, you will get there. So thank you for tuning in this week. I hope this was of some value to you, and I'll talk to you next week.